And my battery didn't charge. Great. Here we are with Campaigns of Montrose. This is a Decision Games mini game. Kind of in this folio package. So, what's my history with this? Look, back in the 90s, I bought some Decisions Games type stuff, some of their reprints of SPI stuff. And I was disappointed in general. Or I've bought stuff over the years that's from the 90s. I had somebody point out to me that, who actually does playtesting for them, that, yeah, you know, they've gotten better. They've gotten better. And to give something a try. And I'm not sure. I think I've picked up a couple maybe over the years, but magazine games and whatnot, and they just didn't hook me enough to want to play them. Like, it's very hard for me to want to play the magazine games for the most part, just because they're in my file cabinets and whatnot now. And I have ones that I remember, and it's so unlikely for me to kind of be flipping through, though, and see what they are. So, like, they've kind of lost a cachet to me. Now, this is going in that same location. However, what happened was a friend of mine found a big sale on Decision Games stuff, where, you know, all of these magazine games and whatnot were like $1 each. The store was getting rid of its stock. Unfortunately, the one thing I most would have wanted, they had boxed games and whatnot, also many of them reduced in price, some of them to $1, I guess. Unfortunately, the one thing that I would have really liked to get relatively cheap was the upgraded Axis Empires. I really wanted an upgrade kit for that game, and instead, and that's what they promised, and instead they ended up just re-releasing, you know, new editions. I guess the changes were extensive enough. This is something you know, I've done some games on the English Civil War and whatnot, but this is one that focuses in on the events in Scotland. And as far as the designer knows, who did design this? This is a Miranda, no? Yeah, well, Miranda did the system, Brendan White. The system is from a game I had interest in, Belisarius' War. But anyway, that had been on my radar as something to pick up, because, again, a period I'm interested in whatnot. That didn't show up in the pile. But anyway, you know, I ended up getting like 28 pounds of games. They were given as a gift rather than me paying for them. Shipping probably cost a lot more than the games did. Well, I don't know. I mean, each game is pretty small. Probably about the same. Anyway, I got a huge pile of mainly decision games, a few other things in there. And this is the first one I'm going to actually look at. Now, I'm not going to particularly prioritize these or anything, but as I've been clipping these, this one is like, yeah, that's a period I'm interested in. Let's do it. It doesn't look big. It'll be a good break. I was doing the musket and pike stuff. I still have whatever the hell it is here. One of the Vea Victis ones. Avec Infinite Regret to do, which has a couple of battles in it. But I wanted to do a little bit of a break. I've done other breaks. Since I'm done with that box, let's go on, you know. So what do we got here? Well, we got an area movement game, or, you know, a point-to-point movement, but it's basically areas with little circles. These things that are yellow are burgs, and they are places that are of importance. The campaign is it Earl of Montrose? Earl of Montrose, Duke of Argyll, Montrose is a royalist supporter, and more than that, perhaps, he's opposed to the Duke of Argyll, who is in favor of the Covenanters, the Scottish portion of the, or the Scottish equivalent to the parliamentarian revolt against King Charles. And you got different kind of movement connections between locations, a regular land route, a mountain route, a highland, okay, so these are the two connectors. But you also have a few distinguishers of the territory. So the highlands are north of this line. This blue line is the royalist limit. And that's going to prevent royalists from going south until certain conditions are met. And then finally we have the barrier between Scotland and England itself. Now, the royalists want to beat the Covenanter armies. They want to attack some of these burghs. Each time they attack a burgh, it counts as, well, each time they're victorious attacking a burgh, it counts as a victory. Each time they are victorious fighting a battle, it counts as a victory. And they have this little chart they follow. Now, I'm going to need, you need about five markers, maybe more than that. I've got tiddlywinks and whatnot. One of them is for this. There's no counter. It was a tiny, tiny little counter mix, okay? You can see this is all it comes with, much smaller than, you know, the 100 counters or whatever in an Aries game. These are really, really small games, but there's also a set of event cards as well. So it's not like, you know, they're going really, really low grade. It's just they've changed the direction to, hey, let's make this a smaller game and whatnot, but put event cards in it. Anyway, what am I saying? So the difficulty for the royalists is that they have to do some of this stuff. In order to win, they have to get up to 10 victories. I gotta swap battery. As they accumulate victories, they cause a heavier response. So here, some additional leaders come in. Here, Leslie shows up with regular parliamentary troops, I believe, which really puts a stress on the royalists. And then eventually you get to the victory. But things are going to be very, very... There's multiple ways to win the game, but one of them is to get to that point. The other one requires you push that point, as you push the victory points higher as well, and you're basically able to invade the south more completely. What else do you have here? Well, you got the turn record map, which doesn't really tell me anything important, except that on this turn, King Charles surrenders, and it's too late for the royalists to aid his cause at all. You got a terrain effects chart, which just tells you the cost of the two different types of territory, and then the burghs have their own fighting capability. Winter, on winter turns, which are the blue ones, there are going to be some special rules. You're basically going to have to go to winter encampments, or else you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You have to kind of end up in them. Winter encampments are named locations. And that means a battle somewhere here during the winter would be very, very painful because there's nowhere named near it. So one side or the other is going to be in serious trouble. Here we have special things about the different regions. In the Highlands, you can only recruit Highlanders. In the Lowlands, you can only recruit 1-strength Lowlander, infantry and cav. Actually, I'm not sure. about, because there is no 1 strength cav. I gotta put these guys over on this side, because these are their event cards. These are the Covenanters. These are the Royalists. Southern Lowlands, the Royalists have further restrictions as well. And then in England itself, the Highlanders and the Irish are not allowed to enter. At the beginning of the game, you have Montrose, the Coffa, and a couple of Irish forces. Now, the Irish are particularly feared and effective in this as compared to the Scots troops, for whatever reason you want to deal with. I will dig into the rules and give you the specifics. It's not, there's nothing, so far that I've seen in the game that looks like it's really going to be, breathtaking or a big change or anything. But then again, is that really what you expect from a little game? Again, I'm putting this in with the magazine games and whatnot. There are a few that really, really, changed gaming to some extent. But to a large degree, they're just giving you different perspectives. And so, we'll see how it looks. Before I dig into the rules, last night I did another gaming session. The first time we did, it's a group loosely because we're getting different people, but for the most part, non-gamers, and or people who've had very little gaming experience. I was really, really impressed last time we did stuff. We did Baltimore and Ohio, and I felt like everybody kind of got it at the end, more or less. So this time, a couple of weeks later, I decided, okay, let's go for something more subtle even, than that, but a simpler set of rules. And went with Imperial, and unfortunately, I feel like getting what the game was about was too big a leap. I thought it would catch, as easily as Baltimore and Ohio. I felt like, because Baltimore and Ohio is a more complex game, and it's kind of weird. Like, I just completely misjudged, what the reactions would be and whatnot. One of the players had serious analysis paralysis in it, and there was sort of I don't know. It did not play out as one would expect, but also I don't feel like people had fun, which kind of sucked, or as much fun as I would have hoped. But I'm going to aim for something much, much lighter next time. Simply, as a break, if nothing else, and to also kind of get a feel for where people are looking. I'm kind of hoping we can get more towards what the feeling I had in B&O was, but I'm worried that maybe we're not going to be able to go into anything particularly heavy. We also have a fairly short time period. It's like the game starts at 6. We can go till like midnight, 1 a.m., but it's slow because, it's people learning games for the first time and whatnot. Well. Okay, I guess let's dig into the rules. Counters have a normal kind of combat strength movement allowance on them. The leaders have a leadership bonus and then a movement allowance as well. Okay. The Royalist wins by making 10 total victories over the Covenanter and burgs. Or if they wipe out all the Covenanter leaders and combat units. Well, that sounds unlikely, but okay. Also, at the end of any game turn that a stack containing Montrose and at least 4 Royalist lowland and or Cav units exists in England itself. Like I said. Now, that sounds really easy, but it's not, because you have to match certain requirements to even be allowed to enter England. So you're gonna have already triggered Leslie, I think, before you have a chance to go in. The Covenanter player wins if Montrose is eliminated, which you're going to want to use him in combat because he's a good leader, and there's a chance he will die in combat. So it's kind of random. At the end of the game, if the Royalist player has not won at the end of the April-May 1646, that's the last turn in the game, the Royalist player concedes the game because the Royalist hasn't won. That's an automatic victory because King Charles ends up surrendering. But there's something interesting here. Or if the Covenant, or if the Royalist player concedes the game, and then they say the Covenanter player, being the government, may never himself concede. I don't know what. I mean, that's just goofy, right? I don't know if it's just put in there as a joke, but I guess if you've got somebody who is not sure that they can stay for the whole length of the game, or it doesn't know if they'll like it or whatnot, they have to play the Royalist so that they have a chance to quit. I don't know. It seems pointless. Like, it really does. And I don't know if it's particularly funny. We've got the setup of the leaders and whatnot where they are. The game turn record is, this has a Royalist side, the Royalists go first, and a Covenanter side. That's helpful. I like that kind of little thing. If you're going to double print counters, which these are, you might as well. The Montrose victory track, we're going to have to use like a coin or something for that. Okay. The sequence of play. Okay. The Royalists go first. They draw a random event card. I have no idea what these are. And they implement the instructions as printed. This is a way to offload special rules and whatnot and put it into a randomized fashion. We'll see how it works. Recruiting phase. As long as it's a non-winter turn, the Royalist player rolls a die for each space where he has leaders on the map, consulting the recruiting table over here to see what he gets. How many troops? The March phase, the Royalist player moves, then handles any battles where he's sharing spaces with Covenanter units, or if he wishes to attack a burg, he can do that. And then the disband phase. In this game, players are going to lose their troops due to an attritional process at the end of each turn. Now, for each space in which the Royalist player wins a victory against the Covenanter, the player rolls on the disband table to determine how many Highland units in that space have looted stuff and go home. If there weren't any such victories, the Royalist rolls once on the disband table to determine how many Highland or Irish units that are in the lowlands, which I think is below the red line, that just go home because they're tired of being away and they have to defend their own homes. And then we switch to a player interface. We switch to the Covenanter player turn. They get a card. They get a recruit. This is, again, active leaders on the map. They get to march. They get to battle. They're not going to attack any burgs. They're not allowed. Well, there's an optional rule that allows them to attack. Is it this? I think it's this Blair Outfall. And a success on that ends up reducing the total amount of victory points that the Royalists, or a successful attacks the Royalists have. Then they have their disband. Now theirs is going to be different. They roll once on the disband table to determine how many Highland units outside the Highlands go home. They don't loot, apparently. And then we go game turn interphase, and if we finish the game, we see that the Royalists have lost, probably. I mean, we check, yeah. Okay. Campaign card phase, nothing exciting there in terms of rules. It takes up this much space. We'll see how effectively the cards handle these special cases. I'm kind of worried they're tiny little cards, not a lot of room for text on them, but it's going to be tiny little text, so. Okay, for recruiting phase, in general, if you're in the Highlands, you can only recruit Highland infantry. If you're in the Lowlands, you can only recruit 1 strength Lowland and cavalry units. Cavalry units, okay, these are 1 strength, they're nothing special, but here it looks like the Lowland cavalry is actually very, very powerful. And I think they count as units. You're not, because there are no 1 strength cavalry units for them. But we'll see. Maybe they show up some other way. This is kind of, so the way this is worded, may only recruit 1 strength Lowland and cavalry combat units. I don't know what the 1 strength, whether it applies to both. But in the southern Lowlands, Royalist leaders may only recruit if they already are stacked with a Royalist combat unit. So you can't just run your leader to get people. If you're in England, active Covenant leaders may only recruit Lowland and cavalry combat units of either 1 or 2 battle strength. You know what? I think I can only recruit these in England, as with this. And there is no cav here. These are Highlanders. This is Lowlander. Oh, there's a fair amount of stuff here. So, yeah. I was looking and I'm like, they don't have a lot of troops to produce. The Irish combat units begin the game on the map at full strength. Once they're flipped to a reduced strength side, they'll never be restored. Once killed, they're permanently out of the game and can never be re-recruited. You're not required to make any of your recruit rolls. You're not required to recruit units to which you're allowed. If not enough units of an allowable type are available, you don't get the extra. And they cannot be transferred between leaders or held over, accumulated from turn to turn. The Covenanter player begins the game with 2 leaders down here that are inactive. This means that they're present on the map but may not recruit or be until activated. The location may change due to some of the cards. They're activated the instant the Royalist player gets his 4th victory, and that's marked on the victory chart. So from that moment, they can recruit, move, and engage normally. As soon as Bale and Yuri are activated, Elko, and I think he's put in as Echo. No, he's put in as Echo. They mentioned the misprint, but you know, I like him better as Echo. Is removed from wherever he is, flipped over to Leslie, and Leslie will be placed in Newcastle, but he will be inactive at this point. And under the same restrictions as Bale and Uri were previously, except he doesn't come in after that 4th victory. In the highly unlikely event that Bale and Yuri are activated by Royalist attack on them in Newcastle, they activate and place Leslie together with any 2 battle strength Covenanter army combat units currently in the off-map pool, with Bale and Uri in Newcastle to defend against the attack. I think Leslie also is active. Leslie is activated the instant the Royalist player achieves his 7th victory, which also triggers the entry into here. Let's see. On the following Covenanter recruiting phase, if still in England, instead of Leslie rolling for recruits, he automatically recruits himself and all 2 battle strength Covenanter troops that are currently off board, up to 5 cav and 1 lowland infantry. He recruits as, after that, if he's not in England, he recruits as per normal recruit rules. The initial automatic recruitment occurs only once, but may be delayed if it's a winter turn. On all subsequent turns, he recruits normally. I need to swap batteries, and I'm going to break for a bit. Actually, I'm just going to plug this one in. Back to it. We're on the March phase. Movement, pretty standard. You have your movement point allowance. You have your movement point costs for a couple of different transitions for a point-to-point game. I'm not going to go over all the things, like movement is always voluntary, you can't cover, all that shit. I'm looking to see if anything stops you. We'll see maybe here, but it looks like you can just move, and I don't see anything that actually stops you when you enter an enemy space, which is interesting. Stacking any number, maybe it's here. Any number of friendly units can stack together. No, here we go. Combat units have to stop when they enter enemy combat units. You don't have to have a leader to move. It seems like a weird thing to actually say, but most of the point-to-point games require that, so. In the winter turns, you have to end your space. You have to end your turn in a friendly, all units end their friendly player turn in a named space where they'll be removed or eliminated. That's a good thing to repeat a couple of times. In a way, you could say it kind of just makes the winter turns, you could just skip the winter turns and leave people where they are. I like this better because it does create some room for blocking people and making it hard for them to get back to a named space, and makes the players consider where they're going. Note there aren't a lot of named spaces in certain areas of the board. In the battle phase, battles must occur if you're in the same space as enemy combat units, or they may occur if the Royalist, if at the beginning of the battle phase is in a burg that they haven't attacked before. Well, they haven't defeated before. Okay. Determine which side has tactical superiority. You roll a die, add the leadership of one leader present. Whoever has the higher has the superiority. If results are tied and Montrose is present, then the Royalist has it. Otherwise, it's random again. Not a re-roll, but random between the two. You form a battle line, laying out all of your unpanicked units. Now, units will not be panicked before you enter a battle, but you create a line of all your units there, and then you stack any leaders on top of each leader on top of one combat unit. They're going to aid that combat unit in its fighting. They can't fight on their own. If you have excess leaders, they're put off to the side, same place you're going to put anything that becomes panicked. Then the player with tactical superiority selects one of his unit and rolls a number of dice, plus the leadership value of any leader there. and compares that to the outcome on the battle results table. Tables are not repeated in the game. They're all just on the box here. Irish do better than everyone else at hurting because they're scarier. The results are applied to enemy combat units immediately. The targeted player chooses which of his units take panics or eliminations. All rolled results have to be applied, elimination results first, and then the panics. The player without tactical superiority then selects one of his units and rolls dice. Now you move that unit aside a little bit because you get to roll each unit once in the sequence. Each unit that's in the battle line. Selects one of his surviving unpanicked units, rolls dice equal to battle strength plus leadership value. A good leader, like a +2 leader with a 1-point unit, gets 3 dice still. So, the individual die rolls are then applied, and you continue alternating until all units have been selected. If somebody, has more units, then they don't alternate. They just finish up at the end. Once all eligible combat units have rolled and the results of all those rolls have been applied, the round ends. If one side's units have all been panicked or eliminated, the battle ends. If both sides have surviving units, the battle continues, and you do these steps again, but only the surviving unpanicked combat units are able to roll. For each panic result, you have to either remove one of your unpanicked combat units from the battle line, or eliminate an already panicked combat unit. An unpanicked combat unit that becomes panicked is placed to one side. It's still intact, but it will no longer participate in the battle lines or roll dice, but it can be eliminated from another panic result. So you, as the receiving player to an injury, get to decide that the attacker pursued you. And that may actually be the better move in a lot of cases, because you can remuster your units, but units that are panicked aren't in the battle line and they can't fight on. They can't keep rolling dice. For each eliminated, you must remove a panicked or unpanicked combat unit and return it to your off-map pool. You definitely want to hit panicked units first, I guess, with that. Irish units have 2 sides, full and reduced strength. A full strength Irish unit that takes an elimination or a second panic is flipped to its reduced strength side. This does not change its panic status. So if you panic an Irish unit, a second panic will hit it again, a third, or an eliminate, and actually flip it over, but a third panic will destroy it no matter what, if you keep taking them on it. Reduced strength Irish unit that suffers an eliminate or a second panic is removed from the game and not placed in the off-map pool because it cannot be re-recruited. Leaders are not affected by the table. The battle is complete when one side survives. The loser has to roll 2 dice for each of their leaders who began the battle phase in the space. On Snake Eyes, their leader is permanently removed from the game. The losing side's surviving units are now all considered unpanicked and have to retreat from the battle space to an adjoining space unoccupied by enemy combat units. The units can retreat together or to different spaces. They can retreat into spaces occupied solely by enemy leaders and into spaces from which the attacker moved into the battle space. So there's not a lot of limitation. They just can't go into enemy-occupied spaces. Irish and Royalist Highlander units may not retreat into the southern lowlands until the Royalist has won victories against both. Oh, I'm sorry. It isn't a point thing. It's these locations. Inverary and Interlachiburgs. Locky. That's this and this. This unit could have started up here if I wanted, and I haven't decided yet. Units unable to retreat will be eliminated. The surviving winning units are unpanicked and are returned to their space. The winner was the Royalist. He gets a marker on the victory chart. If it moves to 10, the Royalist player has won. I'm out of battery charge. Let's do a quick look at the attacks on bergs. Yeah, I better not. I'm going to leave it here and come back for that because we got to charge these batteries. I did a personal video. In addition to normal fighting, the Royalists can battle each burg once, the burgs being these things. The burg has an intrinsic garrison of 2 1-strength combat units. Panics against the burgs count as no effect. And if it wins the battle, the Royalists can attack it again on another turn. It'll still have those 2 garrisons no matter what happened. And once the Royalist has defeated a burg, he can never attack it again. It's marked with a marker to indicate it's been beaten up. Now, I wish I had clear tiddlywinks for that. That would be actually awesome. But basically, you're going to be looking, your Irish aren't going to be good at this, so you probably don't want to use them for it. And you got to get hits on 6s, so they're not easy to kill. And, 2 units fighting back, eventually, sure, you'll eventually kill them, but they're probably going to do, they're probably going to beat you up pretty significantly. Now, the neat thing is, your own panics, while they do count and prevent you from winning, maybe, you may be able to absorb a lot of losses in, in panics rather than eliminates, but I don't know. The burgs themselves can't attack. Okay, now we come to some more meat in the game, the disband phase. Now this is different for both players. The Royalist, if he's won a victory using Highland units, each space in which he's won a victory, he rolls a die on the disband table, just here, to see how many of the units there disappear. They go back in the pool. If, on the other hand, he hasn't won any victories, any of his Highland or Irish units within the lowlands might disband. Now, the northern lowlands, and that I think is between this red and blue line. You roll a die on the disband table and remove that many Highland units from the lowlands. But if you have any in the southern lowlands, below the blue line, you roll twice on the disband table and remove the total number from the lowlands, as many as possible of which must be in the southern lowlands. So bringing your Highlanders down, they're going to have more and more trouble the further south they go. If insufficient Highland units are available to meet the disband, a full-strength Irish unit may be flipped to its reduced side for a reduced-strength Irish unit. Now that doesn't apply. Here it says Highland units only. So the Irish are only in danger if they're down here. Of course, they're your best units. And they have 2 steps, essentially, for this. Now, for the Covenanter player, they roll once on the disband table to determine how many of their Highland units that are outside the Highland are removed. Well, I mean, it's at most 1. It's do you lose a unit or not. Rolling twice, if you're down here, sounds horrible, but again, it's probably 1 per die roll. Are there modifiers? It has a less than and greater than. I haven't seen any, but maybe they're in the options. Okay. Leaders are used for recruiting and augmenting combat troops. They can never attack or defend on their own. In general, they move like combat units. However, they can never enter spaces occupied by enemy combat units unless they have their own friendly combat units going into that space. There's some inactive Covenanter rules. We already touched them. Combat units moving or retreating into a space containing only enemy leaders displace the enemy leaders to any adjoining spaces chosen by the owner that are unoccupied by the displacing player's combat units. A leader may be displaced any number of times in a phase by the same or different enemy units. I'm not sure how you can be displaced any number of times by the same units in a combat phase. That might apply with the retreat rules when we hit here, but the pursuit rules, which are optional. And I probably won't play with them. A leader may be displaced by any number of times. Yeah, I just don't get the same unless it's the optionals. Leaders unaccompanied by combat units may move through or end their movement, displacement, or retreat on a space occupied by unaccompanied enemy leaders without affecting each other in any way, except the first side to recruit or move combat units into that space will displace the opposing leaders as normal. Elimination of leaders. Leaders are not affected by battle results per se. However, they're eliminated if they end a friendly winter turn in an unnamed space, if they're unable to displace when the space they occupied is entered by enemy combat units, if they're on the losing side of a battle and roll snake eyes, if they're unable to retreat after losing a battle. An eliminated leader is never replaced, although Leslie is still placed on the map when Bailey and Yuri are activated, even if Elko has already been eliminated. He's on the other side of the Elko leader. That's the weird thing there. If Montrose is eliminated, the game's over and the Covenanters win. During the winter, each player's recruiting phase is skipped, and each player has to end their own player turn in a named spot, either a burg or an open spot that has a name in it. Any friendly combat unit in an unnamed space at the end of a friendly player turn is removed from the map, and any leaders in such a space are eliminated and gone for good. Okay, some optional rules, and I'm going to look over these and tell you yes or no, and my battery's dead already, damn it. That as batteries age, they start losing their ability to have a full charge, or their charge size decreases, or however you want to put it. Anyway, if that's the case, the way I rotate them should ensure that, like, the longer batteries stay up front for longer, but I still end up hitting the ones that don't last very long. I don't have a easy way to remember the one in that camera right now is particularly short, and I'm not sure it is, but it feels like it. Okay. Recruiting. These are four different options, which can all be, you can use whatever you like. Do it one leader at a time. Macola can never recruit in the southern lowlands. That one feels like a historically reasonable thing. Some of these, like this one, feels like, it's just going to make a headache. Argyle is the only Covenanter leader who can recruit in the Highlands. That, again, I think I'd want to use these two together, maybe. See if I have a pencil. I might mark, I know I have a pencil. I might mark the ones I'm considering here, and then erase them if I don't. So this one and this one I kind of like. Ignore the last four sentences. Leslie always recruits as per normal recruiting leader. I like the flood of his troops. I think that's integral to the concept of this game. If I find that it's unbalanced and want to play it again, I might mark that one. Marching and disbanding. Highlanders from both sides and the Irish can enter England. During the friendly disband phase, all disbands must come in preference order. England, Southern Lowlands, Northern Lowlands. I'm not sure I like that idea. Like, that feels like I'm actually getting rid of I'm getting rid of some of the key concept here. But it does make it possible for me to maybe attack something like Newcastle, which is a big deal. Whereas I won't have the troops without the Highlanders. So let's just keep these two maybe. Marching, disbanding, yeah, we talked about that. Edinburgh. They give Edinburgh 3 1-strength lowland units. I don't know how important that is. Like, 2 of them seems ugly enough. On the other hand, I think it makes Edinburgh, which is a rather large town in the area, or I don't know, I guess you could call it a city, relatively important and something that you probably can't sack as easily. I do kind of feel, though, that Newcastle and Carlisle and maybe Berwick, I don't know. I don't know the populations at this era. But Edinburgh also has a strong castle, so let's just mark that one. Pursuit. After the loser in a battle's retreated, any leaders and unpanicked cavalry, Highlander, and Irish units on the winning side may immediately pursue. They can move to any space they like that's adjacent, not necessarily the ones to which the loser retreated, and then they get to fight again. The pursuing units are thus able to reinforce their side in a battle that is yet to be resolved. A unit may conduct pursuit as many times as it wins battles. If the pursuit leads to new battles, resolve these. I'm iffy on this one. It feels like it adds some kind of tactical concepts there. You don't want to, like, normally you might want to take units as panic so you don't lose the units so you have them to use later. But now with the pursuit, you might want to wipe out your panicked units more quickly. I think there's already some advantages to that. But I think we'll go with it overall. I'm okay with that one. I love that it's real paper. It's nothing special, but it's real paper, so I can mark it up as I like. Pursuit is never made after a victory over a burg. And in Royalist disband, this is important, any unit containing Royalist Highlander units that won a battle and then pursued have to make disband rolls. The reason for that is because the peculiar wording, if units win a battle, it's that space that has to make a disband check. Now, it's like they can't run away from the battle and avoid the disband check, but they do get to make further battles, which I think is kind of cool and might help the Highlander units be more effective. Battle and Burg Assault. Victorious Royalist units which have caused all Covenanter combat units to be removed from a burg in battle may immediately choose to attack the now unoccupied burg. Any units that were panicked begin the battle in unpanicked state. Sure, why not? I'm always in favor of adding options. If I don't, see, the thing is, I'm not sure that I feel that these are necessarily more realistic. I kind of have the feeling that maybe the designer was on the fence on these, but leaned towards putting the rules towards what they wanted, but then put these in. And I really wish there was, in the designer's notes, something about the options, which there isn't. There's a significant amount of designer's notes, but they don't go into the decision on the optionals at all, which is like kind of weird. I feel like a few words on that would have been useful. Covenanter burg attacks. Treat Blair Athol as a burg that can be attacked by the Covenanters, and they can do it once. And the only thing it does is it reduces the victories that the Royalists have. It's a bit of an extra complication. I feel like some of these may have been trimmed away because there's enough in the game already. Let's not complicate what we have to keep track of. And I totally agree with that. But I also am like, yeah, but let's make it more realistic and more believable and everything. Winter. Leaders are not required to end the winter player turn in a named space and are not eliminated if they do not. Sure. I feel like it's a pretty goofy thing to say, he was alone out in the winter. And it does give some capacity to rearrange where your leaders are in between seasons. Leaders. Leaders provide a +1 bonus to the movement allowance of any combat units with which they begin and remain stacked with for the entire friendly march. This can be doubled by a forced march campaign card. Sure. And every time a leader is displaced, the owning player has to roll 2 dice for an elimination. Sure. That'll make up for lower losses. Then we get into an example of play, or a couple of them. A fair amount of players and designers' notes over it. And I think this overall, this is the historical notes here. I read through them all. I didn't find the designers' notes. I think they were overall good. I really do. I'm looking at the things that they went over. I think they were at the right level. I just wish they had gone into the concept of, why you would or wouldn't pick, what is the nature of these optional rules? Because I'm left with kind of is the main rule set what the designer thought is the best game in terms of historical accuracy in particular? Or is it, these add some complication, and I don't feel like there's any distinguishing factor on that. And I think a few little symbols and a couple of words could have indicated why you would pick a given optional rule. Some games give, this is an optional rule, this is a slight advantage to one side or the other. I always feel kind of iffy about those. Like, they have ahistorical stuff mixed in with stuff that's more historical and whatnot, but they seem more worried about trying to balance the game. That's not of terrible interest to me, although I could see that being of interest to a lot of people. So I feel like there's a number of reasons that you could give for why you would pick this why you would pick one option over another. Anyway, I'm kind of excited to give this a start. I don't think it'll take too long. It says about an hour and a half. It seems about right. I'll probably take longer playing it solo just because, with the video and everything, I do take longer. And tomorrow I've got a hike to go on, and I don't have all that many hours until I have to wake up. So it might be a good idea for me not to start yet and try to get some sleep. I will probably fail to get the 8 hours that I'd like to get, but if I can get a good portion of that, I should be fine. In fact, it's probably the best that I don't get 8 hours, that I hike a bit and then take a nap, and then I'm up late because the next day, actually it's not tomorrow, it's today, and then I'm going on the hike. The next day is Friday and I go dancing. So you may not see me start to play for quite a while, but we'll see.